Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And today's Monday. It's August 24th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And we're going to do something a little different today. This was a very unusual and very crazy day. Doesn't mean that this can't continue for a few days, because last time we saw something similar, it lasted for a few weeks. It wasn't quite what we've seen today. I mean, we had a 100-point move down, and then we had more than a 100-point move down from where the market closed Friday to where the low of today, right around the it was right around the regular session opening. I can't remember exactly what time. Let's just look. Looks like we bottomed out right about 8:30, and then that's about 130 to 150 point move. I didn't do the exact math, but you can do the math. And then we recovered uh, another 130 points. So then we took back about half of that. So this has just been a crazy day. It's a huge range, but this is such a big move. You got to look at these as trends. And I got a lot of questions early on about the price action. Is the price action valid? Does it still work? Am I safe trading? And so I'm going to show you. You can see that price action still is as valid as ever. Everything works out, the short-term trends, the bigger trends. We had this two-tier channel working up. You got a break, move to a new high. Then you had one working down, a break, move to a new low. And then we traded up, and there's a break there. It's well after 2 o'clock, so I didn't mark any of that. But everything's still valid. The biggest issue you have is you can't follow our 2-point rule. So you either have to sit on the sidelines and watch, or what I recommend doing, because it's so, if you're reading the price action right, the moves are huge, and it's easy to get a quick scalp, and you can actually get a whole lot more. So what I suggest you do, um, there's only a couple of things you can do. You can make your chart smaller. You can make a smaller volume chart so your bars get smaller. But then it just prints so fast you can't hardly do anything with it. So that doesn't really help you. In fact, you really need to be making your bars, your chart larger. So instead of a 6,500, maybe doubling that, getting up closer to 10,000 anyway, would probably slow it down. But then your bars are even bigger. So it's a double-edged sword. And so really the only thing you can do, I just traded a 6,500 volume chart. But what I would do instead is I would have to have bigger stops. So I just went for bigger targets, and it didn't really change a whole lot. So your stops still go where they always go, 1 or 2 ticks above the signal bar, which is generally going to be the high or low of the swing. If you're reading it properly, it's always going to be the high or low of the swing bar if you're reading it properly. So of course, we don't always read it properly, and then it doesn't matter. You're going to get stopped out most likely regardless. So, but the thing is, you can't use a 3 or 4 point stop and go for 4 ticks, because if you're wrong, and you could actually get stopped out by the noise unless you put it where it goes. If you put your stop where it goes, you should still have the same ratio of losses to wins. But what you have to do is you have to just get a little more profit, because you're using bigger stops for when you are wrong. So I hope that makes sense. I didn't mean to complicate that, but so just as an example, let's back out here and look. But you can see there's a two-tiered trend channel working down through here, and it's very valid. We never got a retest to the low, but that's just because I've talked about this. Every time we get to when the market gets really overdone, that's when you get these huge rallies, and we got that today. Um, Huge rally today. It was a huge move down though as well. So, but the price action is still very valid here. You get your break on this shorter term one. We got an overshoot here of this shorter term one, and that usually leads to your break. Then a couple of moves up to a new high, and then off it goes. Down to the downside, you got one working down. So the second entries are, there's a second entry here that confirmed the trend line, but that's a huge bar. So you probably could have gotten in on this one with a limit order, which would have helped. Okay, I'm sorry, I had an interruption there, but you know, on this particular one, you know, you could have waited on it to break, put your limit order in. Now, not every time is that going to work, but it worked a bunch of times on some of these. It still may not have got you within the 2 point rule. So the bottom line is you need to have a little bigger stop, and you got to go for a much bigger target. But you can see these moves. You know, even the corrections. Just as an example, let's look at this correction in an uptrend. This correction, 43.50 to 36. So what is that? 7.5 points, I believe. Just doing that quick off the top of my head. That's a huge pullback. We get trends that don't even go 7.5 points. Look at this move right here to the upside. 1920.50 to 1941. So that's a 20-something point move on just one little leg there. So it's really nice to take advantage of these days, but I'm going to preface that with a big but. Here's the key. You know, my feelings on it are that if you're not comfortable trading, don't trade. So if you're not comfortable using those bigger stops, or you're not comfortable with the speed and volatility, you're better off to sit on the sidelines and wait till this passes and everything changes again. And it will pass, and it will go back to being boring and slow again. Um, but my personal opinion is, if you can afford to do it and you're comfortable doing it, stick with your normal chart so your bars don't get any bigger, and you'll have to use a little bigger stop. You trade the same way, but just go for a little more profit. Just make sure you're reading the chart properly. And you can see that, all these, everything's still working exactly the same. In fact, if you just look this move down, these bars don't even look that big. They look like normal bars, but when you see how big they are, but if you measure them, that bar there is 1910 to 0550. So that's a 4.5 point bar, and it looks like a normal bar, but it's just because there's so many bars and we had to get so far out to look at it. But these are some big bars, so that's the concern. So again, I'm not going to try to talk about all the trades today. There's so many that it'd take all day to go through them. But understand that you don't get a lot of opportunities like this. So if you're comfortable and if you can afford to use a little bigger stop and a bigger target, you can make some big money. Because if you could catch one of these moves, I mean, if just say you caught this move down. This was a good setup right here. Let's say you caught this move down and you drew your short-term trend line coming down. It's something like that right there. And you just stayed with it until you got a break of that trend line. You didn't even fool with the retest or any of that. You just stayed with it till you got a break of that trend line. So if you entered here at 05.25, which would have been the entry there, and you exited where it broke the trend line right here, you would have got out at, that's a 50-point move you would have had there. And, that's about as simple as it gets, exiting when it breaks the trend line. Even if you'd have entered here and entered there, it's still a pretty good move, but, don't sit there and watch a move like that. Take back all your money, exit, and wait for another entry. So not much else we can say about today other than to talk about the trades. But you can see the price action still works like it always did. It's still valid. It just moves a whole lot faster. I mean, look at all those bars. I haven't counted how many bars we've been getting on an average a day, but I bet you there's 3 to 4, maybe 5 times as many bars here. It's incredible almost. It feels incredible. But it's exhilarating to trade a day like this. And normally when you'd walk away with, if your goal is 4 to 10 points, you might walk away today with 10 to 50 points easily on a couple of trades. So, because your runners are usually safe because of how far it has to move, how far these moves go. So anyway, I'm not going to sit here and beat around the bush and tell you what woulda, shoulda, coulda been. Just understand that the price action is valid. That's what I want you to take away from this. How you might handle it, there's a couple of different ways. Um, Either just sit on the sideline and watch, make your bars smaller, but just don't get them so small it moves too fast for you. It's really, you really don't want it printing much faster than it did on this 6500 today. So I think the real key or the safest way to do it is continue to trade your 6500 or your 2000 tick, your 6500 volume, I should say, or your 2000 tick, and just you understand that your stops have to be bigger, and you got to go for a little bigger profit. And if you're wrong, you have a bigger loss, but if you're right, you get a huge profit. So it all works out in the wash. But if you're not comfortable doing that, don't try doing it. Just sit here and watch and get experience. Flip over to sim and sim trade it to get experience trading the market like this, so you know what it feels like, and you know what works and what doesn't work for you. So I mean, that would be my minimum take on this, is that I would sim trade it if nothing else, just to get that experience. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. I can't. The phone's ringing off the hook. Everybody wants to talk about the market. So anyway, been an interesting day. It's been an interesting couple of days, uh, starting last week. Uh, is it going to continue like this? Maybe for a day or so, but eventually it'll settle back down. Where that'll be, we'll just have to see. Um, we're not going to guess where the market's going. All we can do is follow the price action, and that's the best way to do it. So, needless to say, I'm going to wrap it up today. If it's more normal tomorrow, we'll have a normal type chart lesson. But they're just hopefully you understand with the way this is. There's so many trades you can talk about. We'll spend all day. I could do probably 8 or 10 trades in the first 15 minutes. So I'm not even going to attempt that. I just wanted to go over the options and show you that the price action is still valid and everything still works the same. It's just moving faster, and your stops have to be bigger and your targets need to be bigger. So hope everybody, if you did trade, that it went well for you. If it didn't, that's a clue that maybe just sit on the sidelines, get in the sim mode and trade the sim until this clears up or until it slows down, and just get that experience with it. So um, even as long as I've been trading, I don't have a lot of experience with this, but if you just relax and understand that everything still works the same, shouldn't feel any different. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.